They told the world I was dead to them. Not in those exact words, but close enough. When your own mother says on national television, Natalie is no longer part of the Harper legacy, there's no misunderstanding what she means. My name is Natalie Harper. I'm 42 years old. I live in San Francisco, and I run one of the most successful cybersecurity firms on the West Coast. I've spent the last 20 years fighting online predators, financial crimes, data warfare, things most people don't even know exist. But tonight, I walked straight into the heart of a different battlefield. My family. The Harper Cross engagement gala was held at the Aria Hall downtown, one of those ridiculous glass and gold venues my mother adores. It sparkled from across the street like a diamond trying too hard to matter. I wasn't invited, of course I wasn't, but I came anyway. My tuxedo was clean and minimalist, tailored so sharply it could cut glass. No jewelry, no frills, just black on black. Deliberate, unapologetic. When I stepped through the entrance, the room froze, literally. People turned mid-sentence, mid-sip, mid-fake laugh, and just stared. A symphony quartet screeched to an unplanned pause. You'd think I was a ghost walking in. I scanned the crowd until I found her. Eleanor Harper, my mother, regal in ivory satin, surrounded by sycophants, a champagne flute in her hand, her lips halfway to some story I'm sure cast her in a flattering light. Her gaze caught mine and her mouth dropped open just a bit. Not horror, not anger, just disbelief. As if her fantasy had cracked and I was the spider crawling out. Then came my sister, Eliza. Center of attention as always. Wrapped in a silver beaded gown that sparkled like a disco ball, her arm linked with Damien Cross. They made a perfect image. Glossy, curated, the future of the Harper Empire. And I was the shadow behind the camera lens. I didn't say a word, didn't need to. My presence was the statement. I moved through the crowd like smoke, silent, cold, watching them feel the heat. A few people smiled awkwardly at me. A couple others avoided eye contact entirely. My cousin Avery mouthed, "Oh my God," before quickly ducking behind her fiancé. It was Eliza who broke first. She let go of Damien's arm and made her way toward me, all forced grace and barely concealed panic. I didn't move. She stopped just short of me, her voice low and tight. "What are you doing here?" I tilted my head slightly. "Celebrating family." Eliza blinked, lips twitching as if trying to form a response. But before she could, the ballroom doors opened again, and a photographer stepped in, cameras flashing. I didn't flinch. I turned toward him. Let him get the shot. Let the whole world see it. The prodigal daughter, the black tux, the scandal. So much for the perfect Harper image. I stood there until the illusion shattered. Then I turned, walked to the bar, and ordered a soda water. Dry, clear, sharp. Just like me. I grew up in Coral Gables, Florida, in a house that looked like a magazine spread. White stucco, Spanish tile, manicured hedges so perfect you'd swear they were plastic. Inside, it was like living in a showroom. Everything cream-colored and breakable, even the people. From the time I could talk, Eleanor Harper had a plan for me. "Presentation is everything," she used to say, brushing my hair into a tight, gleaming knot. I was supposed to smile, wear pastels, and say yes, ma'am to family friends with last names like Fairchild and Van Buren. I was supposed to be the Harper brand. Eliza took to it naturally. Even as a kid, she was elegant, soft-spoken, the kind of little girl who kept her shoes clean and never messed up her dress. By the time she was 10, she was modeling for Harper Group's junior catalogs, flipping through swatches with our mother like it was scripture. She made it look effortless. They adored her for it. Me? I was the one who took apart the cordless phone to see how it worked, the one who rewired the garage lights after they shorted out. I wasn't delicate. I didn't smile unless I meant it. And I never once asked to be the face of anything. They hated that. At 16, Eleanor signed me up for a summer internship at their design affiliate. "It'll help you understand the business," she said, sliding a Harper-branded portfolio across the table like it was an invitation to royalty. I said no. She blinked. "Excuse me?" "I already accepted a spot at the University of Florida's summer computer program. I'm doing a coding lab." Silence. For a few long seconds, I thought she hadn't heard me. Then she stood, slow and cold. "You are not a computer person, Natalie." I met her eyes. "I think I am." She didn't scream. My mother never screamed. She didn't need to. Her voice could cut you like piano wire. "You are not going to hide behind a screen your whole life. You are not going to crawl into some dark lab and play with keyboards like some tech recluse. You are a Harper." "I don't want to be," I said, and the words hung there like smoke. She turned away. Then you're no daughter of mine. That night, I packed a duffel bag and walked out the side door. No big exit, no dramatic goodbye. Just me, a Greyhound ticket, and a laptop covered in stickers Eleanor would have called tacky. I didn't look back. Over the years, I tried. I sent postcards. I called on birthdays. Once, I even flew home for Thanksgiving. Eleanor barely spoke to me. Eliza hugged me like I was a tourist passing through. After that, I stopped reaching out. Instead, I built a life. Degrees, internships, the Navy, Cyber Command, private contracts, eventually my own firm. I made myself unignorable, everywhere except to the people who shared my name. The Harper Group scrubbed me from their website. Public bios said Eleanor had one radiant daughter, and Eliza never corrected them. And yet, when Eliza announced her engagement on Good Morning America, I watched it live. She held up her ring and smiled with that polished Harper poise, the same one we were trained to wear since we could walk. I remember thinking she got everything she wanted, and then wondering why it still felt like I was the one who left. After I left home, I traded debutante luncheons for data encryption. My world became code, patterns, firewalls, and networks that spanned continents. I worked quietly, efficiently, and far from the cameras my family lived for. By 28, I was contracting with the Department of Defense. By 32, I was embedded with a UN cybersecurity task force targeting human trafficking rings across Eastern Europe. I spent nights decrypting files with names that made my stomach turn. No cocktail parties, no gala gowns, just real people in real danger, and 1,000 lines of code between them and something worse. That's where I met Marcus Rell. He wasn't flashy, just brilliant. Former military intel, sharp as hell, and somehow always calm, even when we were staring down digital attacks meant to wipe out entire networks of refugee data. Most people never saw what we did. People think war is bullets and bombs, but we saw how it happens now, through silent breaches and weaponized data. We were stationed in Amman when it happened. We had uncovered a series of targeted phishing attacks that were quietly extracting medical files from a refugee database. Children's names, locations, vulnerabilities. It wasn't just espionage, it was trafficking prep. We tried to stop it, but we were late. They launched a payload anyway. The breach came fast. Through a routine health intake portal we hadn't hardened yet. The servers caught fire, literally. Overload triggered a surge and the whole rack went up. Marcus was inside when the first unit exploded. I was locked in the adjacent room, trying to reroute traffic and preserve what data I could. By the time I reached him, the smoke was already thick. They said he died instantly. I never saw his body. But I remember his voice from just before the attack. We were sitting on the roof, laptops open, eyes red from staring at screens all day. "Don't stop fighting," he told me, "even if no one thanks you, especially then." He smiled like it was the simplest thing in the world. Then he went back to coding. That was Marcus. I still have that line written in my office, black ink, framed, the last real thing he gave me. Back in the States, I watched Eleanor give an interview from a Harper yacht, sipping wine in soft focus while she gushed about Eliza's engagement and the legacy of strong Harper women. The interviewer asked about me. She smiled, tight and poised. Natalie made her own choice. She picked machines over family. That was her path. Then she looked directly into the camera and added, "We wish her peace, peace," as if I was some memory they'd buried. As if I wasn't still out here, fighting ghosts they couldn't name, in places they didn't know existed. And as if, after all this time, I didn't still want her to say my name like it meant something. It had been a month since I walked into that engagement gala and set the Harper fantasy on fire just by showing up. Since then, silence. Not a single word from Eliza, not a text, not a call, not even one of Eleanor's famously backhanded press releases. They were pretending I didn't exist again, which was fine, until someone reminded me that I did. I got the message through a burner email account used by old contacts from my military days. Just 4 words. Bennett wants a meeting. Admiral Thomas Bennett, retired Navy intel, once head of defensive cyber operations. A man who didn't waste words or time. If he wanted to talk, something was wrong. We met at a little cafe tucked between a pawn shop and a Korean church in Alameda. The kind of place where nobody asked questions and the coffee came in mismatched mugs. He was already seated when I walked in, hands folded over a manila folder. No small talk, just a nod toward the chair across from him. "You still read people?" he asked as I sat. "When they try to hide something? Yeah." "Good. Then you'll understand I'm not here for pleasantries." I waited. "It's about CrossCorp," he said, tapping the folder. "Specifically Damien Cross." I didn't flinch, but I felt something settle cold in my gut. He's not what he says he is, Bennett went on. Officially, he runs biotech. Implants, regenerative therapies, clean tech innovation. But that's just the shine. Underneath, shell firms, fake consultancies, dark money. We've been tracking fund flows through Belize, Cyprus, and Hong Kong. Hundreds of millions in vapor, all tied back to his holding company. He slid the folder toward me. I didn't open it, not yet. And Eliza? I asked. Not directly mentioned in any reports, but she's listed as a consulting partner on 3 of the shell firms. Same signature, same dates, same financial routing. I finally opened the folder. Photos, dossiers, transaction logs, copies of contracts with her name at the bottom in perfect blue ink. My sister's handwriting hadn't changed a bit. My throat was dry. I thought he was just a show pony, I muttered. He might have been. But now he's dancing in darker circles, and either your sister is blissfully unaware or she's neck deep. I closed the folder carefully. And you're bringing this to me because you've got a reason to care, and you've got the skills to dig deeper. We don't have the jurisdiction unless it ties to federal assets. But your family, you can ask questions we can't. I didn't respond. He studied me for a second, then added quieter, Rel trusted you. That landed harder than I expected. I took the folder and stood. Thanks for the coffee, I said. He just nodded. Be careful. They've built their lives on silence, and silence doesn't like being interrupted. Outside, I sat in my car for a long time, the folder on my lap. Eliza's signature stared up at me from a photocopy of a fake consulting agreement. I used to watch her write her name like that on birthday cards, in glitter pen, with hearts over the eyes. Now it was ink on a contract tied to international laundering. I didn't know if she understood what she'd signed, but I knew one thing. Signatures don't lie. I took the folder home and spread everything across my dining table. Eliza's name appeared too many times, attached to companies that didn't exist, projects that never launched, accounts that led nowhere and everywhere. Every signature matched. Every wire transfer came back to CrossCorp. And still, I kept thinking, maybe she didn't know. Maybe Damien forged her name. Maybe she just smiled, nodded, and signed what he gave her. But deep down, I already knew better. I needed help. Someone who knew where to look beneath the numbers, who wasn't afraid of dust-covered ledgers or 2-decade-old tax fraud. So I made a call. Henrietta Lane lived in a split-level townhouse off Van Ness. Retired prosecutor, old school, no nonsense. She greeted me in a threadbare cardigan, a coffee mug in one hand, and a stack of legal briefs in the other. "Didn't think I'd hear from you again, Harper," she said, pushing a stack of mail off a chair. "What are we digging up?" I slid the folder across her table. Her eyes flicked over the first few pages, and something in her posture changed. Less casual, more focused. "CrossCorp," she muttered. "This name's been circling for years, but no one's ever pinned anything solid. Every paper trail dead ends in a shell." "Not this one," I said. "That trail goes to my sister." Henrietta's eyebrows rose, but she didn't ask. Instead, she got up, walked to a back room, and came out 10 minutes later with a storage box full of files marked Cross. Tentative. Let's see how deep this goes. For the next 4 hours, we combed through everything. LLCs, shadow nonprofits, fake boards, silent partnerships. We found CrossCorp payments made directly to the Harper Group during the last real estate crash, disguised as infrastructure consultancy. "That's not investment," Henrietta muttered. "That's a bailout." I leaned over the ledger. "You think Eleanor knew?" Henrietta didn't even blink. She signed off on it, literally. The payment had been routed through a now-defunct Panamanian firm, but the paper trail was clean enough. CrossCorp bought influence, and in return, they got legitimacy. Eliza wasn't just collateral, she was part of the deal. Then came the second set of documents, ones Henrietta had chased years ago but never cracked. They showed a hidden control group behind several CrossCorp shell companies. Most were men, dummy executives in different countries, but one name kept surfacing in side memos, internal emails, and third-party legal notices. Margot Cross, Damien's mother. Officially, she was just a philanthropist, a former biotech executive turned advocate for clean health initiatives. But underneath that glossy image, she ran a nonprofit that funneled money through a global web of fake charities, consulting firms, and family-controlled brokerages. The entire empire was built on ghost transactions and co-opted reputations. "Jesus," I muttered. "She's the real architect." Henrietta nodded grimly. Margot builds the machine, Damien keeps it running, and Eleanor, she gave them a brand to launder it through. I sat back exhausted, angry, sick. They'd wrapped my family name around something rotten like silk around a knife. I can't believe Eliza. Henrietta cut me off. Natalie, your sister's name is on 3 fraudulent agreements. Her tax records show income from companies that never existed. Either she's complicit or she's the most oblivious woman in California. I didn't answer. There was no innocent version of this. I stood, packed the files, and slung my coat over my shoulder. You gonna blow it up? Henrietta asked. I paused in the doorway. Not yet, I said. First, I'm going to make sure I know exactly where the cracks are. Because once I started, there'd be no stopping. And when Harper and Cross finally crumbled, I wanted the whole world to see what they'd been built on. I stayed up all night reading every document again, every forged signature, every wire transfer. Every photo of Eliza smiling beside men she probably never bothered to Google. The deeper I went, the more I saw how deliberate it all was. There was no version of this where she didn't know. I stared at a copy of one of the consulting agreements. Her signature was precise, practiced, not a rushed scrawl, not a forged flourish. Her real name in real ink, on paper that stole money from the very people I'd spent years protecting. Around 2 a.m., I found myself scrolling through old photos. Me and Eliza as kids, her sitting on my shoulders at Clearwater Beach, our matching t-shirts with glitter dolphins. I found one where she was maybe 7, giggling at my old clunky Gateway laptop, asking what the green code meant. You're building something? She had asked. Trying, I'd said, and she smiled like that was magic. I closed the photo app and looked at the 2 folders on my table. Henrietta's documentation and Admiral Bennett's report. The whole story, from shell companies to silent partners to the legacy of Eleanor Harper Inc. I thought about Marcus, about that afternoon in Jordan, sitting on a plastic chair on the roof of a sand-blasted complex, watching the sun dip behind rust-colored buildings. His voice had been calm, steady, final. Don't stop fighting, he'd said, even if no one thanks you, even if they erase you, even if they say your name like it's a burden. I'd kept that promise in pieces, with code, with systems, with impact. But this wasn't a system. This was personal. That morning, I attended Marcus's grave for the first time since his burial. It was quiet, tucked beneath an olive tree in a shaded corner of the Veterans Cemetery. The grass had grown in, soft and thick. Only 4 people had shown up the day we buried him. No honors, no ceremony, just a folded flag and a silence too large for a life like his. I knelt beside the stone and placed my hand flat on the cool marble. They're building empires on ghosts, Marcus, I said quietly. They're selling my sister's smile and my mother's name like product packaging, and they think no one's looking. I stood, brushing off my knees. But I am. That evening, I texted Henrietta one line. Let's prepare the leak, she replied within 2 minutes. Got it. What's the drop date? I stared at the calendar on my screen, thumb hovering. Eliza's televised engagement party was scheduled for the following Saturday, broadcast live on some network special called Love, Legacy, and Luxury. Of course, I typed back, day of the broadcast. The confirmation pinged back immediately. I closed the laptop and exhaled. This wasn't revenge. This was accountability. And if my family wanted a perfect show, then I'd give them one, complete with credits, receipts, and truth in high definition. The engagement gala was held at the Summit Pavilion, a rooftop glass museum in downtown San Francisco that overlooked the entire city. The sky was still streaked in gold when I arrived. Lights glittered from the windows like constellations. Inside, everything gleamed. Polished floors, crystal place settings, curated floral installations that looked like they were designed for a perfume ad. This time, I didn't sneak in. I walked straight through the front doors in a tailored black tuxedo, same as before. No embellishments, no apologies. A security guard stepped forward, eyes flicking to his guest list. I gave him a calm look. He stepped back without a word. Inside, everything was rehearsed elegance. Classical quartet playing softly in the corner, waiters gliding by with trays of champagne. And in the center of it all, Eliza and Damien stood beneath a glass chandelier shaped like a starburst. She wore a white satin gown, her hair swept back, smiling like this was her coronation. No one noticed me at first, but the silence came quickly. One by one, conversations paused. Heads turned. Whispers floated like perfume through the air. Is she really here? Even the music wobbled for a second, as if the cellist lost her place. I didn't stop. I walked past the servers, past the models pretending to be guests, past my mother standing in a sculptural blue gown beside a Harper Group step and repeat. Eleanor froze mid-sentence when she saw me. She didn't blink. She didn't smile. I held her stare for 2 full seconds, then turned away. I found the perfect spot, center of the room beneath the massive glass dome. I reached into my inner jacket pocket, pulled out a small matte black USB, and handed it to a quietly dressed man in his late 30s wearing a federal badge just barely visible beneath his blazer. He nodded once and walked away. 10 seconds later, all the large projection screens, which had been displaying a live reel of Eliza and Damien's photos, glitched. And then it began. A new reel flickered to life, screens filled with cross-corp transaction maps, fake consulting firms, shell account registries, a slideshow of names and signatures, including 3 that belonged to Eliza Harper. Gasps rippled through the room. The crowd turned like a single organism, eyes darting to the screen, then to Eliza, then back. Eliza's champagne flute slipped from her hand and shattered. I didn't flinch. From the far side of the room, 2 men in dark suits stepped forward, federal agents. One held a leather badge folder. The other placed handcuffs around Damien Cross's wrists as a dull, stunned murmur filled the air. Damien didn't fight, just looked around like someone had changed the script on him. Eleanor gasped, one gloved hand pressed to her mouth. She didn't move. Eliza stared at me. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her hands trembled. Her eyes were wide, confused, like a child realizing she was the only one who didn't understand the rules of the game. I stepped forward, just enough so they could all hear me. "Truth isn't optional," I said, my voice low but steady. "Not anymore." And then I walked out. No theatrics, no speech, just the hard, honest sound of my heels on polished tile, slicing through silence like the end of an era. Behind me, the party shattered. Online, it would be replayed 1,000 times. But for the Harpers, it only took one night to end decades of carefully built illusion. By morning, my name was everywhere. Harper heiress exposes family's criminal empire during live engagement broadcast. Cybersecurity CEO shocks San Francisco society with on-air takedown. Justice or betrayal? Natalie Harper's truth bomb splits public opinion. Some called me a hero, a whistleblower, a warrior for truth. Others labeled me a bitter sister, a media-obsessed outcast looking to drag her family through the dirt. The headlines ran both ways, and the internet lit up like a battlefield. I didn't say a word. Not to the press, not to the cameras outside my office, not to the talk shows who kept calling my assistant asking if I'd be interested in a redemption interview. I stayed silent. I watched it all from my apartment in Hayes Valley. Dim, quiet, spare. I sat on the couch with the blinds half drawn, laptop open but untouched. The screens glowed with timelines, posts, screenshots of my mother's carefully crafted image unraveling in real time. She didn't take long to fire back. 2 days later, Eleanor Harper sat down for an exclusive interview on a primetime evening special. The camera framed her like a grieving queen. "She was always brilliant," she said, voice steady, eyes dry. "But Natalie chose enemies over family. That was her decision, not ours." She smiled, the kind that had charmed billionaires and board members for decades. "I just hope she finds peace, because clearly she's been looking for it in the wrong places." The host nodded solemnly. "Do you still consider her part of the Harper family?" Eleanor's answer was simple. "No." And that was that. Eliza disappeared from public view entirely. No social media posts, no statements. Her engagement was, predictably, postponed indefinitely. Damien was under federal custody. The Harper Group's stock froze on trading day 3. My old family was bleeding quietly behind closed doors. People on the internet fought over me like I was a symbol. Some said I was what accountability looked like. Others called me a disgrace. The hate mail started rolling in by day 4. Emails, texts, a few thinly veiled threats. My company tightened its security protocols. I didn't flinch. On day 6, someone slid a note under my office door. "Snitches die broke." I left it there. I was used to shadows. I had lived in them long enough. But the one message that stayed with me wasn't a threat. It was a memory. Marcus, standing in a doorway in Jordan, jacket half-zipped, laptop under one arm, smiling at me before a long night of data recovery. "Doesn't matter if they see it," he'd said. "What matters is that it's true." I kept that line with me now. Not out of sentiment, but because it reminded me why I did it. I didn't release the documents to get revenge. I did it because truth doesn't wait for comfort. And sometimes the clearest statement you can make is silence. It was just after 10 on a Wednesday night when I heard the knock. 3 short taps, soft, hesitant. I was sitting on the floor of my apartment, a cup of tea cooling beside me, the news still playing on mute in the background. Another panel of experts debating whether I was a whistleblower or a traitor. I didn't get up right away. The building security downstairs hadn't buzzed me, which meant whoever it was had gotten past them, which meant family or former family. When I opened the door, Eliza was standing there. No makeup, no heels, just an oversized sweater and leggings, her blonde hair tied back in a messy knot, like she'd stopped trying halfway through. She looked smaller somehow, like a shadow of the woman who once lit up billboards in cocktail gowns. "Why that day?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I didn't answer at first, just stepped aside and let her in. She sat down on the edge of my couch like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to touch anything. Her fingers trembled as she laced them together in her lap. "I keep replaying it," she said, staring straight ahead. The second the screen changed, your voice, Damien in cuffs, it felt like the floor disappeared under me. I stayed silent. Eliza turned to look at me. "You didn't even warn me," she said, a bitter laugh slipping out. "Not a word. You just dropped a bomb in front of the whole world." "I had to," I said simply. She flinched at that. "Why?" she whispered. I walked over and sat across from her, not close, not far, just enough for her to hear me. "Because justice doesn't wait," I said. "It doesn't care about parties or dresses or how good someone looks in a press photo." She looked down at her hands. "I didn't know." I didn't say anything. "I didn't know what Damien was doing," she said again, more firmly. "I didn't know about Margot, or the accounts." "Eliza," I said quietly, "your signature was on 3 fake consulting agreements. The money went into your own accounts." Her voice cracked. "I didn't read them. Damien handled everything. I trusted him." "You didn't ask questions," I said. "You didn't want to." Her eyes filled, but she blinked hard, like she wouldn't give me that satisfaction. "I loved him," she said. "I thought we were building something real." I leaned back. "You were," I said. "Just not the kind of legacy you imagined." She didn't argue, didn't defend, just sat there soaking in the weight of what she'd helped carry. After a long silence, she stood. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "But I needed you to know. I wasn't trying to erase you. She paused, eyes wet. "I wanted things to feel easy for once, and you were always the hard part. The reminder of everything I couldn't be." I looked up at her. "I never wanted you to be me," I said. "I just wanted you to be honest." She nodded once, shaky, then turned toward the door. I didn't stop her, but I didn't close it either. She walked out without looking back, and I stood there for a long time, watching the hallway, the soft click of her boots fading like the last echo of something I couldn't name. The door stayed open, just a little. Weeks passed. The media storm began to shift like all storms do. The noise faded into chatter. The headlines moved on. Another scandal, another downfall, another family broken by secrets. But me? I got quiet. Not out of fear, not out of shame. Just, finally, there was space to breathe. I poured myself into a new project. Something small, something that didn't need approval or image consultants or boardroom applause. It started with an old email from a contact at the UN Refugee Task Force, someone who used to work with Marcus. "We've been trying to build cyber training modules for girls in underserved communities," she wrote. "No one wants to fund it." I read it twice. Then I started writing checks. The program launched 6 weeks later, quietly, an online initiative teaching coding, ethical hacking, and data protection to young girls in high-risk zones. We named it the REL Foundation. No big announcement, no gala, just code, laptops, and firewalls that worked. One morning, a letter arrived in my office mailbox. Handwritten, folded neatly in a bright red envelope. It was from a 14-year-old girl in Detroit. She wrote, "My school counselor said I wasn't smart enough for computers, but I just built my first website. One day, I'll build systems that protect people too. Thank you, Miss Harper." Her name was Lonnie. She signed it with a little heart drawn over the I. I sat at my desk for a long time just staring at that letter. Then I reached for a clean frame from the shelf and slid it inside. Right beside the photo of me and Marcus on the roof in Jordan, laptops balanced on our knees, sun setting behind us. I didn't need news coverage, or vindication, or a seat at a table I was never welcome at. I needed this. A single girl with a code window open and the belief that she could protect something worth saving. That night, I walked up to my rooftop. The sky was clear, the city glowing beneath me like circuitry, windows blinking, cars moving, data everywhere. I watched the skyline and whispered to no one in particular, "Honor isn't what they give you." The wind tugged gently at my coat. "It's what you protect, when no one else will." I closed my eyes, not to forget, but to remember the right things. The laugh Eliza used to have before she learned how to pose. The way Marcus leaned back in his chair and hummed when he solved something. The silence at my parents' house the day I left, and the strength it took not to go back. I wasn't a Harper anymore, not in their eyes. Not in their glossy magazines. Not in the guest lists or the legacy brochures. But I was something else now. I was the firewall. And this time, no one was getting through without being seen.